Agnès Callamard, my colleague and friend. We are having this conversation at a very sad moment to mark the 1-year anniversary of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. This is also an opportunity for us to talk about global freedom of expression issues and free speech, free press issues in the United States generally. Let's start with talking about the creation of Global Freedom of Expression project that I asked you to come in and head, and you've done so brilliantly.
And what we demonstrated at Columbia Global Freedom of Expression is actually the richness of our common understanding of freedom of expression, and the fact that so many courts around the world, particularly of course in Latin America, Africa and Europe, have actually taken the international standard from Article 19 of the ICCPR and developed a jurisprudence that has become quite integrated across those 3 continents and is enriching the jurisprudence of each of those continents.
Let's talk about your other work, and that is as the Special Rapporteur for the United Nations on extrajudicial killings. And then your involvement in the investigation of Jamal Khashoggi's murder.
The case of Jamal Khashoggi is both symbolic of the patterns, and it's also quite exceptional. So in many ways, it represents a global patterns of attacks against physical attacks against journalists and media workers, which literally do not result into any kind of prosecution. So the large amount of impunity attached to those killings as far as the masterminds are concerned. In a number of cases, the hitmen may be identified, but who ordered the crimes are not. And that was also the story last year because the Saudi authorities had quite very quickly identified the so-called hit team, but did not really get into who ordered it. So the gap there was very much in keeping with the unfortunate pattern that we have identified. What made the case of his killing particularly distinct, though, is how international it was. So it took place outside the country of the killers and outside the country of the victim. Most importantly, for you and for I, in addition to all of that, and which was often overlooked, it also violated freedom of expression, which is a point you made very well in your op-ed in the Washington Post, where you demonstrated that the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, a resident of the United States, also sought to violate deeply held norms.
We all should be concerned, whatever our citizenship, about violations of free speech, free press around the world. As I like to say and have said, it's now the case that censorship anywhere is censorship everywhere. And that certainly applies in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. The focus I also wanted to bring to this, which was the genesis for the piece that I did in the Washington Post that you referred to, was I wanted to make the case that if you just cared or looked at it from the standpoint of freedom of speech and press in the United States, just from the standpoint of the First Amendment, he was murdered in significant part because of his exercise of First Amendment rights in the United States through the things that he said and wrote, especially in the Washington Post. And so it raises this profoundly deep concern as to what the United States will do and can do legally when one of the people or more of the people who are exercising their First Amendment rights are then killed, murdered, or otherwise penalized for that speech by actors and states around the world. But it made clear that there is, under existing United States law, a basis for pursuing a criminal investigation from the United States into this terrible episode that happened in the consulate in Turkey. Not only to begin an investigation, but if the federal government identified they felt were the perpetrators, that there was a basis for initiating a criminal action against them. Not having done that sends a frightening, concerning message to United States citizens and all people who exercise their First Amendment rights, that the United States government will not, in a sense, protect them against foreign actors who penalize them, even commit murder.
Absolutely.
Because of the exercise of their rights.
I'm certainly hoping that short of a federal level investigation of the nature that you are describing, I still believe that either the FBI could do something given its mandate. If not the FBI, then the Director of National Security could do something. I'm also hoping that the various ongoing suits around the CIA analysis of the killings and of the responsibilities, that this information will eventually be made public, either through a formal request, through a court case, through the Congress, and so on. So I remain moderately optimistic that within the United States there will be sufficient commitment to the values you've described and sufficient courage to move with either one of those actions.
Yes. The key point is that people need to see that if you care about the First Amendment exercise of rights of free speech and free press, you should be concerned about how the government protects you by prosecuting and going after perpetrators of crimes abroad against you for the exercise of those rights. That's one of the things that the Khashoggi case makes
extraterritorially
clear. We should all be concerned about anything that happens to journalists or speakers around the world, no matter what the country they come from. We should all be concerned about that. Can you talk some, Agnès, about what you found in the investigation that you conducted as the special rapporteur?
What I did find was that the execution of Mr. Khashoggi was premeditated, that it was well organized, that it was planned, and that there is no other way to describe it but as a state killing. I reached the conclusion that it was the responsibility of the state of Saudi Arabia, not of rogue actors, as they have tried to pretend, on the basis of the evidence I have collected regarding the organization of the killing, and on the basis of international law related to what amounts to a state act, as opposed to what amount to individual act by individual actors. There is only one conclusion that what can be reached. That was a killing for which the state of Saudi Arabia is directly responsible. That finding has been rejected, and so far the state of Saudi Arabia has refused to acknowledge its responsibility as a state, and has placed the blame of some fairly lower key individuals that were part of the hit team. What I have also found is that the state of Saudi Arabia again failed to investigate the killing in good faith, failed to cooperate with the Turkish authorities in good faith, and there is strong evidence pointing to the state of Saudi Arabia cleaning up the crime scene so as to make it impossible for the Turkish investigators to find any kind of evidence.
And just finally, as far as we know, and as has been reported in the press, our intelligence agencies also agree with those conclusions.
Well, according to the leaks that have been provided by various media, yes. I did not rely on this information because it was not credible enough in terms of meeting my standard of evidence. But everything that I have read and heard, including directly by people who were briefed by those agencies, yes, concur with my conclusion.
Agnès Callamard, thank you very much.
Thank you.